Hello, everyone. I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt, and I would like to invite you to listen to a very special discussion about HBO's Euphoria with two special guests, creator, executive producer, writer, and director Sam Levinson, and Euphoria's Emmy-winning star, Zendaya. We added a new hyphenate to your name. How does that sound?
Oh, it's pretty crazy. We're not joking.
No. This is very serious.
I know.
So before we talk about the series and this incredible sort of next iteration of the show, I do want to talk about Emmy night, because I think anyone watching that, it was so surreal to be watching sort of a virtual ceremony, but to see your reaction, all the people you had in your room, your loved ones, your glam team, your your other team, how did that feel? And now when you think back on it, does it seem real to you?
Yeah, no, I think it just still kind of feels like a little bit of a dream that happened that one night, Yeah, it was extremely special. I mean, I still, it all happened, so fast, and I was just so lucky to have my family around, so that I mean, if I couldn't imagine having to speak in front of a bunch of people see. Oh, it was already scary enough having to do it in front of people I couldn't see. So yeah, no, it was a very special night. I called Sam right away. I FaceTimed Sam and Ash, and I was like, guys, we did it. It was a very, very, very special night.
That was the best accepted speech ever. I mean, also too, the way you half fell out of your chair, but didn't, you were hooked. It was just, it's the first time I've ever screamed at my television. I was screaming in my house. I was so happy. What a night.
Definitely a highlight moment in a year when we really needed a highlight moment. So thank you for both of you. And most importantly, where are you keeping your statues, Zendaya?
Currently, because I am not home right now, I'm in Atlanta shooting Spider-Man. It is at my mother's house.
Okay, good. So for safekeeping.
Yes.
Well, congratulations again. And I think it was so deserved and such an important win in an important year and for a very important show. So obviously the show was renewed for season 2, and let's go back a few months. How has the pandemic affected your ability to shoot season 2? And then Sam, maybe you can talk about how these special episodes were created, because I have a sense it was created as an offshoot sort of plan B because of the pandemic, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. Look, I think when we, were shut down, we were a day away from shooting season 2.
Oh my wow.
And so, I think just because of, my nature and the fact that I'm not good when I don't have anything to do, I immediately within 3 days was going, well, what if we were to do this? What if we were to do that? And I kept trying to find new ways to sort of, tell this story, or a story that kind of fit into the world of Euphoria, with the restrictions that we kind of, knew, we had. So, and, so I think after, because in the beginning it was well, you're going to be shut down for, 3-4 weeks, and then we're going to talk again. And, I'm not the most optimistic person in the world. I tend to think optimism is a very dangerous attribute. So I was I was thinking to myself, we're not going back for another year. I know.
So at what point did you start the reality set in for both of you, and you said, okay, we're not going to be moving on as we hoped, but how do we pivot? And when did that become clear to you?
I think, I mean, look, to be honest, I would say before we were even shut down, I knew that we were going to get shut down, and I knew that we would have to do something. But, and then I think I pitched it to HBO a couple of times, and, and I think, look, rightfully so. They were we want to keep season 2 the way season 2 is. We love the scripts. We love the scope. So we don't want you to just go fuck the whole thing up and start, rewriting everything, which I sometimes have a tendency to do. And then so it was, well, can we do something in the interim? Is it are there some sort of bridge episodes? So I'd call Z, and we'd, talk and shoot the shit about it. And then it just came down to the idea of, look, if we're going to do this, we have to do it in probably 1/5 of the normal time that it would take to shoot an episode. We can't have multiple locations. We can't, we can only work a certain number of hours, mass, all this stuff. So given those limitations, and because, I always write kind of knowing what the budget of something is and all that. I just thought, all right, well, how do we just tell this story? And, and maybe it's just Rue and Ali sitting at a diner on Christmas Eve, talking about life and regrets and forgiveness. And it really gave I don't know, it gave me an opportunity to sort of just dive into the kind of soul of Rue in a way that the normal show doesn't necessarily lend itself to, just structurally and narratively. And which I thought was really interesting and kind of fascinating. And
almost
originally,
in a sense, it feels sort of like a spin-off like in a parallel universe with the existing narrative. And Zendaya, how did you feel when you read this feature, essentially? And it's sort of like a long bottle episode that informs the main narrative, but is sort of like this great offshoot of it. And what scared you most about attempting this? Because it's very dark, it's very content heavy, very dialogue heavy, not a lot of action, but also very difficult material, especially for people struggling with sobriety right now, which I know this year has been a real test for people. So what were your first feelings when you read it?
Well, it's interesting because this episode now started as a scene that was going to be in season 2.
Okay.
That Sam had read to me quite a while ago. And I read it and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. It was just, Ali and Rue sitting in a diner having a conversation about her sobriety. And it was obviously much shorter. It was only like a few pages or whatever, but I just thought it was so insightful and so beautifully written. And I personally, it was one of my favorite scenes of the whole second season thus far, as to what he had written. And so when it came to creating these episodes, I mean, and Sam saying, hey, what if we just did one of you two, basically that scene, and just did the whole episode that scene. And I was like, sold. I'll say less, whatever you do, like I'm following your lead, because I think we've never really, we've heard kind of Rue speak in her head, but we've never heard her articulate those feelings out loud. And I think Ali offers so much to her. He sees her like no one sees her. He can see through all the things that she tries to hide, even to herself, and serves as this truth for her that she I think she really needs someone like that for her.
Well, in a sense, it seems like she can hide a little bit from most of the people in her life, even from Jules. Like, they save their love for each other in the good times, but she can't hide from him.
Yeah,
he can see right through her because they speak the same language.
exactly.
And I love that he can see sort of right through her shenanigans.
Yeah, absolutely. And holds her accountable. But I think, it's a unique experience, and in order to really fully understand someone in that way, you kind of have to have lived it, and I just, other than just, selfishly as an actress, just wanting to be able to work across someone like Coleman, and being able to do just, an actor's dream, which is just being able to sit there and act across from someone else and just do a scene. Like, that's like amazing.
Sort of like classic 1970s cinema.
Yeah. But, aside from that, it just is a beautiful episode. And I think talks about things that so many people I think will need to hear. Yeah. So, I'm really, really proud of it. I'm very grateful that I could do it, or we could do it. Yeah.
You were able to pivot in such a meaningful way, essentially.
Yeah.
And Sam, tell me what sort of rehearsal time you had for this, because you hadn't built this into your regular schedule. Obviously, every day is regimented. So how, if at all, did the actors have time to prepare? And as the director, did you have time to work with them on this? Because it is sort of a simple setup, you know, two actors in a booth. But I imagine there's more to it than what that we end up seeing in terms of your prep.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, we had one day of rehearsal, you know, so, and it's hard because they were wearing masks and you have zero idea how a performance is going if someone's wearing a mask. So I was sitting there during rehearsal going, well, this isn't particularly helpful or, you know, insightful, but at least they know their lines.
Right.
But I also, at the same time, like, look, Z's got such a crazy work ethic, and Coleman does too. And they're so gifted that and I've worked with Z obviously on season 1. We went and made a movie right before this that had, you know, 100 pages of straight dialogue.
Now
you
in
know,
the Oscar race too, as of today.
oh, I still haven't finished it. I'm finishing it now, so don't want to get ahead of myself. But no. So we, you know, and so I love writing for people that I love working with, and that's the truth. So I didn't have much anxiety about it. I think the anxiety that I had was more just from a filmmaking perspective. How do we shoot this in a way that forces the audience to sort of lean in and, you know, and engage with it, as opposed, because you can't block it. There is no blocking. There's no movement. There's no nothing. So, and also too, how can we, you know, sort of do it where we can just let, you know, 2 minutes play out on Rue's face as she's talking, or just beyond her. You know, there's that moment at the end of the episode that just kills me. It's that last sort of, you know, 10-minute section. We did 2 takes of that. That was Z's first take. She showed up, it was the thing. And as soon as she got into it, I could just see it overtake her. And it was just my job to, you know, capture it. And, you know,
you did it very well.
Yeah, she's, you know, they're both extraordinary. I'm very proud of the work that we all did.
Well, Zendaya, it's interesting. Coleman has the heavier lift in terms of the dialogue, but to me, as just an observer of the craft, it might be harder to do what you did, which is react and be silent. So tell me a little bit about that, the challenge of actually not having that much to say and listening for 2 hours, because it really is sort of the sort of ultimate challenge as an actor.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is just being present, you know, and really listening to those words, and listening to what, you know, the words that Sam has written, which I think everything has, you know, such a deep meaning and purpose. Like nothing is said for no reason, you know, nothing is put in there without intention. And so sometimes it can be difficult to remain present when you've heard it like a trillion times. And, you know, it's 4 a.m. and you're in a diner and you're just trying to stay awake and keep your eyes open, you know, while sitting down all night. Like that was the tough thing, is like trying to keep my energy going.
Right.
On night shoots, and you're sitting down the whole time eating, yeah. You know, so it's like, oh,
man. Are you guys shooting in the middle of the night? Like what's the time frame of nighttime we're talking about?
Yeah, middle of the night.
Yes, sundown to sun up. You know?
Oh my gosh.
Because it's all glass, you know, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's a glass diner. So
and location-wise, where were you I assume in California somewhere, but where exactly did you shoot?
I think I never know where I am in Los Angeles. I find it to be very confusing, but we were at Frank's Diner in Burbank.
Oh, okay. So you're
Burbank. We're in Burbank. This place is amazing. It's gorgeous looking. I love this place. Yeah.
If we want to visit when we can safely do so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in terms of it, and it sounds like you're still in post, which I assume is a tricky process now with all the restrictions in terms of working. What has been, Sam, the joy of cutting this and editing this and doing post on this that has surprised you? Have you surprised yourself in what you were able to pull off?
I rely a lot on our supervising editor, Julio Perez, who is,
Oh,
who has who is always finding the sort of beating heart of this show, and who I owe an enormous amount to. So yeah, what surprised me about it is, look, I think in some ways, what I was interested when I was making season one was about not being able to articulate how you feel and letting the camera articulate it for the audience and for the characters. With these episodes, I think it was the inverse. It was, let's let these characters find these characters that I think we're really genuinely rooting for. And it was also just an interesting opportunity. I mean, I think Rue has more dialogue in this episode than the entirety of season one. And just honestly, and I also was in a very kind of reflective state, as I think a lot of people in this country were. And I just wanted to kind of allow these two characters to kind of ruminate about life and about regret and about forgiveness, and to really unpack it, and I love what Ali says. It's that look deeper within yourself, look deeper into your actions, into who you are as a person. And the restrictions of the world provided an interesting canvas to explore. I'm really thrilled with the result. They're such wonderful actors to work with, and I always have it's like in my head, I imagine it, and then when Z and Coleman show up, I go, oh, I didn't even know that was possible. So
they sort of take over this part of the writing process that you finish, but they sort of take it to the next level in a way that is probably a surprise sometimes.
Always. I mean, scripts are nothing until someone, they're just blueprints until an actor shows up. And
scripts are something. All right. Yeah. If it was nothing, we would not be here. He's let. I learned so much every time.
And on that front, sorry to interrupt, but I do want to know, what have you learned making this show, Zendaya? You've obviously, we look at you in sort of awe as sort of the material you're able to tackle, and you can go from something very commercial like Spider-Man and then do something like this. It's really rare, especially for a younger performer. What have you learned from the show that you've taken with you onto other projects, which are now sort of, the world is at your feet?
I don't know about that, but
well, from the outside, it seems that way.
I mean, I don't know. I've learned so much. I really have. I learned from everyone that I've been lucky enough to work with on Euphoria. I learn from Sam every day, whether it just be in conversation. It could be a simple thing like a new word, because he has an extensive vocabulary that I do not have, or just about life, and I'm very lucky for that, or about the art that we get to work on together. I've learned so much about the technical side of things, watching, Sam and Marcel do what they do. I mean, they're match made in heaven in that regard, and I just get to watch them be creative and come up with the things that they come up with for, Euphoria. And I just sit back and I'm just like, trying to absorb and be a sponge as much as I can, and try to learn all the lingo, because I want to be like these guys, these are the cool kids. So yeah, I mean, I've through Euphoria, I've also learned just about like myself, emotional vulnerability, what it means to really feel things fully and allow yourself to not be so self-critical, know what it's like to break down your own wall sometimes. Euphoria has definitely made me a lot more sensitive. I don't know if that's a good thing.
For a performer, that's a good thing.
But like in regular life, it's tough. It's like, oh, I'm feeling too much now. All right, we need to pack it up.
It sort of opened all of you guys. You're all just these raw emotions and raw nerves. Right?
Absolutely, it cracks your whole chest open. And makes it just a lot. You just open to so much more. But I guess that means you're open to so much more love too, and beautiful things, and feel even better too. So I'm grateful for it.
Sorry to interrupt. There is a great discussion between these characters about sort of the physiology of addiction that I think, as someone who hasn't struggled with this, which is so difficult from an outsider's perspective, the idea that this isn't your fault. And he sort of talks Rue through, you were born this beautiful baby, and unfortunately there was something predestined for you up here that is just making this part of your life. So I would love to know, what does each of you want people to know about sobriety and about this struggle that you think other narratives haven't gotten right in the past? Because I feel like I've learned a lot about this particular struggle. Maybe
I'll leave this question to Sam, because in the same sense, this is unique, and I learn from him in this regard. I get to take his words. So over to you, Sam.
No, it's funny, this is always the stuff that makes me a little bit emotional, because it's hard. It's really fucking hard. And I think the biggest aspect of learning to live life clean is about forgiving yourself and knowing that you can do better. Knowing that you're not a lost cause, that there still is time to do good in this world. Mm-hmm. I think that's the toughest part for any addict, is because it's when you're in that cycle, it's impossible to cut yourself any slack. And at the same time, it's that shame that perpetuates the addiction in the first place. So you go, well, what the fuck does it matter? Why get clean?
Right.
What's it matter? I'm already, a piece of shit. I'm already all of this stuff. And I think it's that conversation, that dialogue with yourself that I think is the most important aspect of it, because there's a lot of, it's like, look, there's things you've done to other people that you wish for forgiveness, but there's also the things that you wish for, there's also the forgiveness that you can give yourself. And just knowing that, like, you have a lot to give and to offer other people, and knowing to recognize when someone loves you, and that, it's, I don't know, I'm being a little inarticulate, but it's a tough journey. It's a really brutal one. And I don't know, I just, a lot of shows and things when I was, growing up, or, things, and I'd watch, and they never got, it never got deep enough into the shame of it, like the personal shame, and what a fucking, anchor that is on people trying to get clean, and
especially for young people. I think it's hard regardless of age, but this show really speaks to, first of all, adolescence is so hard anyway. You're dealing with questioning gender and sexuality, and your hormones are doing their thing. And then to have this on top of it, I think is what Rue is, the fact that she's been able to, insofar as we've seen her, coexist with this and hopefully continue to do that, I think is just it's really powerful.
Well, it's also the interesting pairing between Rue and Ali, because Ali is in a different point in his life, and he cleaned up later, and she's still young. I got clean when I was young, and I met a lot of people in recovery it's like, there's that thing where they go, man, I wish I got clean when I was your age. 'Cause, you haven't lost that much yet. And that's such a, it's such a, it's such an interesting, just, juxtaposition just between these characters, and when you get clean and knowing what the road, what if you don't, if you don't stop using, where this road leads. So it's just an interesting way to unpack it between both of them and their own personal lives,
Right. And also to know that he isn't this holier than thou character. He stumbled along the way. We find out his real name, which is a really great moment between the two of them. She's like, oh, you just have this like regular name, you're just this guy, which I thought was really great. But I do think, especially this year, as people are struggling so intensely to just get through the day, especially if they're struggling with sobriety and addiction, it's very powerful. So I want to thank both of you for exposing yourself like this. I'm sure it wasn't fun every minute.
Well,
I'm grateful. Listen.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's sort of fun. What else? I don't know.
Well,
I
insofar
enjoy it,
as you get to work and make stuff, but the material doesn't lend itself to a lot of laughs. I guess it's really my point.
Fair enough. There's some emo days.
Unless you're inserting some jokes and posts that we're not aware of. I don't
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank both of you for taking time to talk with us today, and congratulations again, and stay safe and healthy. And we look forward to the grand rollout of season 2 when it's safe to do so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.